morning, everyone, and welcome to day 16 and chapter 16 of the book of Proverbs. If you are just joining me, my name is Meg, and I have invited you into my personal devotional time where I'm going through one chapter of Proverbs every day in the month of January, and then by the end of the month, we will have gone through the entire book together. So today, I'm going to be reading out of the NLT and some out of the ESV. And so we're going to jump right in, starting in verse 1, which says, "We can make our own plans, but the Lord gives the right answer. People may be pure in their own eyes, but the Lord examines their motives. Commit your actions to the Lord, and your plans will succeed. The Lord has made everything for his own purposes, even the wicked for a day of disaster. The Lord detests the proud, they will surely be punished. Unfailing love and faithfulness makes atonement for sin, but fearing the Lord makes people avoid sin. When people's lives please the Lord, even their enemies are at peace with them. Better to have little with godliness than to be rich and dishonest. We can make our plans, but the Lord determines our steps. The king speaks with divine wisdom. He will never judge unfairly. The Lord demands accurate scales and balances. He sets the standards for fairness. A king detests wrongdoing, for his rule is built on justice. The king is pleased with words from righteous lips. He loves those who speak honestly. The anger of the king is a deadly threat. The wise will try to appease it. When the king smiles, there is life. His favor refreshes like a spring rain. How much better to get wisdom than gold, and judgment than silver. The path of the virtuous leads away from evil. Whoever follows that path is safe. Pride goes before destruction, and haughtiness before a fall. Better to live humbly with the poor than to share plunder of the proud. Those who listen to instruction will prosper. Those who trust in the Lord will be joyful. The wise are known for their understanding, and pleasant words are persuasive. Discretion is a life-giving fountain to those who possess it, but discipline is wasted on fools. From a wise mind comes wise speech. The words of the wise are persuasive. Kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul and healthy for the body. There is a path before each person that seems right, but it ends in death. It is good for workers to have an appetite. An empty stomach drives them on. Scoundrels create trouble. Their words are a destructive blaze. A troublemaker plants seeds of strife. Gossip separates best friends. Violent people mislead their companions, leading them down a harmful path. With narrowed eyes, people plot evil. With a smirk, they plan their mischief. Gray hair is a crown for glory. It is gained by living a godly life. Better to be patient than powerful. Better to have self-control than conquer a city. We may throw the dice, but the Lord determines how they fall." Oh, okay. So the first verse that stuck out to me today, honestly, I'm going to almost like chunk it, like verses 1 through 3. We can make our own plans, but the Lord gives the right answer. People may be pure in their own eyes, but the Lord examines their motives. And commit your actions to the Lord, and your plans will succeed. So upon reading this the first time, it made me remember that we are not sufficient in ourselves because we do have the freedom, right? We do have free will. We can try to go down our own path. This is our second warning, right? Our first warning was back in the book of Proverbs, the chapter Proverbs 14:12, which said, again, that there is a way that seems right to man, but it leads to death. So there are ways that we think are right? We're like, this is gonna be good, this is awesome. However, when we remember that apart from Christ, we cannot do anything, and we have to trust in God. We need to trust in God because he is working through us. John 15:15 says, "I am the vine, you are the branches," and this is Jesus speaking. "Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit, for apart from me, you can do nothing." We cannot do anything without Jesus. And what we need to do is we need to remember to acknowledge him in all of our ways. We need to be just dedicating our days to the Lord. And what ends up happening is then it almost like it lessens our burden and stress. So what I mean by that is, if I'm sitting here and I'm like, man, I have to control everything and I have to figure everything out on my own, and what am I supposed to do? And I have all these situations that are ahead of me that I don't know how to handle. The stress can be almost like pressing down on you. But when I remember that when I acknowledge God in all of my ways, and James tells me that I can call upon God and he will give me wisdom for these specific situations, I'm no longer just trusting in myself. I am no longer saying I have to figure this out. But the other verse that I loved here that was so important, the second one, which is, people may be pure in their own eyes, but the Lord examines their motives. It's important that we don't become prideful, because pride is going to separate us from God, because we are no longer trusting in God and we are saying, God, I got this. God, no, my human wisdom is enough. And it's not enough. And there are areas in our lives where we are all prideful. Psalm 139 describes such an intimate relationship with the Lord, where the psalmist is saying, here's my heart, examine it, show me the ways that I am being prideful. We also know that God detests haughty eyes, which means having like a chip on your shoulder. You think you're better than other people, you think you know more, you think you don't need help. And this is a problem for a couple of reasons. First is, Proverbs tells us many times that there is wisdom in counsel. There is wisdom in going for asking for godly wisdom, for godly help, and for people to guide you. The second thing this is a problem is, we're told that God disciplines those whom he loves, and when we accept discipline, we're being wise. If we are prideful, we are unable to accept discipline, and we are unable to accept the godly correction. So that means we aren't going to grow in our walk, but instead we're going to remain on this path that we think is right, and when it leads to death, we're going to be really surprised. But it really made me think of the woman who was going to be stoned. I'm going to read that. That was in John 7, starting in verse 53. So I'm going to flip there, and I'm going to be reading this one out of my ESV. Okay. And it is called, it's actually the woman caught in adultery. So I'm actually going to start at 8, verse 1. But Jesus went to the Mount of Olives early in the morning. He came again to the temple. All the people came to him, and he sat and taught them. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery, and placing her in the midst, they said to him, "Teacher, this woman has been caught in the act of adultery. Now, in the law of Moses commanded us to stone such a woman. So what do you say?" This they said to test him, that they might have some charge to bring against him. Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. And as they continued to ask him, he stood up and said to them, "Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her." And once more he bent down and wrote on the ground. But when they heard it, they went away one by one, beginning with the older ones, and Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him. Jesus stood up and said to her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" She said, "No one, Lord." And Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn you. And from now on, go and sin no more." And it made me think of this specifically for verse 6. So the Pharisees are bringing this woman not because they really want to follow the law of Moses. They aren't coming because they're like, look, I love the Lord, I want to follow his laws, like, this is wrong. No, they said this to test him. The intentions of their heart posture was to test Jesus, and Jesus knew it. Jesus knew it. Jesus is like, you're being, like, they're being hypocritical here. They're saying, "Hey, Jesus, look at this person." Well, they're not even examining their own hearts and seeing what's in their own hearts. And we can do that. We can so easily do that. Matthew 7:5 reminds us, "You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck in your brother's eye." And that is, it's true. We can very much so easily see faults in other people, but we forget that there are things that we're dealing with. Matthew 7:2 says, don't judge or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the same measure you use it. And so if we take like a second and we reflect right now and we just think about like our lives in general, or I'll make it personal, I think of my life in general. If I were to judge people in the same measure that I have judged people before I have let the Lord in, and sometimes I still can be quick to judge, I would be in trouble. I would be in big trouble. And one, it reminds me that God's grace is what I need. I need the Lord's grace. I cannot survive without Jesus. Here's another reminder of that, right? Like, I need the Lord. I cannot do things without him. And I have to also remember that God's judgment is just, and that we are full of pollutants if we do not let God in, if we do not let God come in and purify our hearts. One of my prayers is always that I have a pure heart. And I think what the psalmist in 139 did is something we need to do every day. We need to say, God, here is my heart. And we need to humble ourselves and rid ourselves of the pride that say, I know, I'm fine, look at me, I'm doing all this stuff. No, rid ourselves of that pride to be able to sit in the presence of God and say, God, what is it in my life that's leading me to death that I think is the right thing? What is it? In what ways am I not acknowledging him? And sometimes it's hard because we need to wait in patience. Sometimes we're like, man, like I really need this job, or like I don't like the job that I'm in, and I want a new job. And sometimes we get ahead, and instead of taking a moment, acknowledging God and saying, God, this job isn't what's providing for me. You are what's providing for me, and wherever you put me, there's a purpose for me there. So lead me where you will, and living a life that's spirit-led. We are so quick to be like, God, you aren't acting fast enough, so I'm just gonna help you. But you know, every time we see that, there's a problem. I'm going back to 1 Samuel actually, and I actually referenced this last night, and it was chapter 15, and it says that the Lord that is actually not the one I want to go to, I don't think. This is the one I wanted to go to. It's actually in 13, and it says Saul's unlawful sacrifice. So he waited 7 days for the appointed time by Samuel, but Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and the people were scattering from him. So Saul said, bring the burnt offering here to me, and the peace offerings. And he offered the burnt offering. As soon as he had finished offering the burnt offering, behold, Samuel came, and Saul went out to meet him and greet him. And Samuel said, what have you done? And Saul said, when I saw the people were scattering from me, and that you did not come within the days appointed, and now that the Philistines had mustered up at Michmash, I said, now the Philistines will come down again against me at Gilgal, and I have not sought the favor of the Lord. So I forced myself and offered the burnt offering. And Samuel said, you have done foolishly. You have not kept the command of the Lord your God, which he commanded you. For then the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. But now your kingdom shall not continue. For the man sought out a man after his own heart, and the Lord has commanded him to be prince over his people, because you have not kept what the Lord had commanded you. Saul was told very concretely he needed to wait for Samuel to do this offering. And he was like, all right. Like, I just picture him at like midnight of like the 7th day. Like, okay, it's the 7th day, let's do this. But then he started letting fear creep in, and instead of trusting in the Lord, he went and he took it into his own hands. Meanwhile, there were times that David, it seemed like an opportunity had presented himself, that he could kill Saul, and Saul was the one who was trying to kill him. But each time someone was like, hey, look, you could kill Saul right now. Hey, you could do this right now. Saul never was killed by David, because David was like, no, like this seems good, but this isn't what God told me to do. And so I think acknowledging God in all of our ways and all of our things, in all of our moments, is to go to him and say, okay, God, this is what I'm thinking. Is this the right thing to do? Or God, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I need your help. And so I think today what I'm really going to focus on is removing any pride from my life, removing anything that is hindering my ability to trust God, to not focus on him, because that is going to lead to my destruction. The other thing that I loved was verse 32, which is better to be patient than powerful, better to have self-control than to conquer a city. And this has been quite the wonderful theme going throughout the book of Proverbs. And it really makes me, again, think about the importance of just making sure that my life has the fruits of the Spirit, but also keeping 2 Timothy very close to me. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and of self-control. And that when I am focusing on the Lord and I am living a spirit-filled day, that my life will produce these fruits. So today, as I go throughout the day, anytime I feel stressed out or anytime I feel tempted to maybe not want to take advice, or maybe I want to feel tempted to say my way is best, or if I want to feel tempted to not just be patient and wait on the Lord, I'm going to be patient and I'm going to wait on the Lord, but I'm going to take that as an opportunity to go into prayer. I need to make sure that God is, like, just like we've been talking about the fear of the Lord, that he is truly the Lord over my life in every single area. And so that means there's not one place where I'm like, I think I can do this without him. So that is what my big takeaways were. I would love to hear about your takeaways, and you can leave them in the comments, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for day 17. Bye.